Today in the magistrates court, several key documents were handed over to the defense in front of Magistrate Judy Lashman concerning the charges, the extradition proceedings relating to Azruddin and Nazar Mohamed. Joining me in studio to discuss all allegations surrounding this process is none other than the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honorable Mohabir Anil Nandlall. Minister, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here once again.
So let's start off in relation to what transpired today. Can you explain to us what happened in the magistrates court earlier today?
You will recall, and your viewers will recall, that on the 31st of October, when the matter was first called in the magistrates court, and the Mohammeds were taken there pursuant to an arrest warrant issued under the hand of the magistrate, it was stated that on the adjourned date, that is to say, the 10th of November, that the prosecution will make disclosures to the defendant. And today was fixed exclusively for that purpose. And that was done. A huge bundle of documents received from the United States government by the government of Guyana relative to this extradition were handed over to the defense, as we are required to do in accordance with law and in accordance with due process, and they were handed to the defendant's lawyers. They include, and let me go through them, a certificate from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, essentially authenticating all the documents that are attached to this certificate to say that they are authentic documents emanating from the United States of America relative to extradition. That is why such a high functionary of the US government is required to put a due form of authentication to the documents. The second document is from the United States Department of Justice, where no other than a delegate of Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, issues a similar document to say what is attached here are all documents, authentic documents from the Justice Department of the United States. That is what the law requires. And these are the documents. Then, in addition to that, you have another certification from the Office of International Affairs, Criminal Division, Department of Justice, United States of America. Then you have an affidavit in support of a request for extradition of Nazar Mohamed and Azruddin Mohamed. And this affidavit is sworn to by one Michael Berger. Michael Berger is an assistant United States attorney attached with the U.S. Department of Justice in the Southern District of Florida. This is the prosecutor that appeared in the court and presented the papers to a judge and a grand jury. And the gentleman in the affidavit, totaling several pages, summarizes the case. All of this is summary of the case. The indictment, gold evasion, tax evasion, money laundering, conspiracy, fraud, all of that, all committed in the United States of America. They have the procedural history of the case, the way, and it outlines how the offenses were committed in great details. Everything is set out here. Then a summary of the charges. Each count is explained in relation to Nazar and in relation to Azruddin and the role that they play. Then there's a summary of the evidence now to support these charges. And the lawyer outlines the evidence, a summary of the evidence. Another series of pages. And they detail, they summarize how many evidence, how many witnesses testified, and they give you a summary. As normal, they block out the names of the witnesses. That is how extradition is done. Then you have all of that, 70, 18, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, all of that. Summary of evidence, 22 pages. Then you have a conclusion, and it's signed by Michael Borgia, Senior Litigation Counsel of the United States Attorney Office of the Southern District of Florida. Then exhibited to that is the indictment itself. And this indictment was issued by the United States District Court of Southern Florida, and it has a case number. All the indictments, the charges themselves are listed here, right? There's another 12, let me see how many pages that is. Let me see. All of this are the charges. And then those indictments, 14 pages of indictments. And they are signed by Jason R. Redding, Quienas, United States Attorney. Lorinda L. Laria, Acting Chief, Fraud Section, Criminal Division, Department of Justice. Michael N. Borgia, the same person we talk about, Senior Litigation Counsel, the Senior Prosecutor. And Jill Simon, Trial Attorney, Fraud Section, Criminal Division, Department of Justice. All of these documents and more attachments, all these are exhibits now to support all of that. He has their passports and everything else. This is called the extradition request bundle. And this is accompanied by a diplomatic note from the Embassy of the United States to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to say, with compliments of the US government, this is the duly authenticated extradition bundle. That is what we were supposed to disclose today, and we disclosed it today.
So, AG, I'm confused. So, this conversation surrounding the ill-preparedness of the prosecution to submit these documents, and that leading to the postponement of the case in November 24, where does that come from?
So that allegation of ill-preparedness is a fabrication and a contrivance of the Mohammeds. This bundle was given to them. This is what we received. And this was handed to them. So where is the contrivance? I would have thought that the Mohammeds would be worried and would try to get their lawyers to sit down and start to prepare. Instead, there is a public commentary there that is intended to deflect from this serious criminal process and to bring in all sorts of irrelevance, which I'm going to deal with. The prosecution, let us say we wanted to start today. Would they be able to start today? Would it have been fair to the Mohammeds if the prosecution said, here's the document, let us commit him today? They're asking for due process. They're asking for the protection of the law, on the one hand, and when that is extended to them, they defile the process. And they go on a political propaganda that is self-destructive, but they are misleading the population. We are firm that we are following the legal process. Why you think their lawyers didn't say much today? You think if the prosecutors had stood up to say, Your Worship, we are ready to proceed, you think they would have been ready? They just get the documents. So it is natural. It is required that time be afforded to them to prepare their case. That is the duty that is owed to them. And we are ensuring that our duty is discharged to the letter and spirit of the law. In fact, when the 24th was first suggested, one of their lawyers readily accepted the 28th of November as a better date because they wanted more time And we are saying in the meanwhile, we are going to give you some additional documents which we feel out of fairness we should give to you. We don't have to. We are bending backwards, in other words, to ensure that they are accorded all the documents so that they can properly prepare for whatever it is that they need to do, so that they do not run afoul or they do not cry that they are the subject of the very thing that they are crying now. So, if you do, you are condemned. If you don't, you are condemned. And they have this narrative running that people are apparently buying into.
Yeah.
And that's my purpose here. My purpose here is not to go over the law, and I will have to do it again, because they keep repeating misleading information. They keep peddling these inaccuracies in order to gain public sympathy, in order to create this impression that they are the victim.
One of the accusations, AG, that is being made, or concerns rather is being raised, is that for some reason the government of Guyana has procured the services of 3 internationally acclaimed lawyers and are paying for the services of those lawyers. Is that unusual or outside of what is the norm?
As I have explained before, in extradition proceedings, the request comes from a foreign state. In this case, it is the US government. The lawyers who are prosecuting this request are representing the interest of the United States of a government. The requesting state is whose interest is being prosecuted. So most naturally, they have a say in who will represent their interest. Under international extradition law and practice, under comity and reciprocity which govern extradition processes across the globe, the country to whom the request is made discharges the obligation of providing that legal counsel, that legal representation, obviously with the approval of the US authority. In this case, because we wanted to avoid and insulate the process from the allegation of political interference, lawyers from outside of Guyana were brought in with the approval of the US government. And yes, the government of Guyana has to pay for that. Anybody can challenge me and call around the Caribbean or anywhere else and find out if that is not the usual practice. Go right to Trinidad and Tobago and you will see British Queen's Counsel are brought from England to represent the prosecution in Trinidad. And the Trinidad government pays for that on a regular basis, and that happens across the globe. And I come back to the Vishnu Marcus Bisram extradition request, which, as I said, is still fresh in the minds of many Guyanese. Guyana requested Bisram in Guyana from the United States to stand trial for murder in Guyana. The US government provided legal services and paid for those services and then sent Bisram back here. That is the reciprocal responsibility and arrangement. That's what reciprocity means. You do for me and I do for you. I explained that in a previous program. I don't know how much I have to explain these things. And so the government of Guyana is paying. That is our duty in extradition law. I hear a set of cases were cited by the gentleman who made the commentary. And said that the police legal advisor did the extradition on behalf of the requesting states in those matters. That is true. But a fear has been expressed. And the people are entitled to choose their own lawyers. Perhaps he may know why he wants lawyers in Guyana. That is a fear expressed by the people.
So, on this same conversation, AG, you have also a particular attorney at law that Azruddin Mohamed, in comments earlier today, expressed his dissatisfaction or disapproval to some extent with him being on the case. That's Glenn Hanneman.
Glenn Hanneman.
Why is he on the case?
First of all, Glenn Hanneman lives in Portugal. He doesn't live in Guyana. So that satisfies the very requirement. None of the lawyers are ordinarily resident in Guyana, including Glenn Hanneman. Glenn Hanneman migrated from this country several years ago and lives in Portugal. And the US government also requested Glenn Hanneman to represent their interest.
Okay.
What do you want Guyana to do? Reject them? And I see that he has and plus Glenn Hanneman is very experienced in extradition matters. And I don't know Glenn Hanneman is a PPP lawyer. I heard him say, I am a PPP lawyer for the past 30 years. I can't remember any political case in which Glenn Hanneman appeared with me for the PPP. Glenn Hanneman is a defense counsel of prominence in this country and has appeared particularly in the criminal arena and has done several extradition proceedings in Guyana. So he's very versed and experienced in the area. Nobody questioning their lawyers. You can't tell the American government who you want to prosecute you. At what level does that make sense? You're choosing your own prosecutor. Would he like for the Americans to determine who will defend him? If that is a position, then, it's fair play. Let the American determine who will defend him. If he wants to dictate who will defend the U.S. interests. And, I don't want to get down to this level, but if he's going to nitpick like this, I could say, there are allegations implicating him in murder. And the person who was arrested for the murder, when that person was arrested, two of his lawyers, who are currently appearing for him, turned up and represented that person, Rondell Bacchus. That is in the public domain. So if you go down that road, there's a very, very slippery slope that he's going down. But each side, in any case, is free to choose their own legal representative. You see, these guys on the one hand want to speak about constitutional rights and constitutional freedoms and due processes. But those things are a two-way street. The same way that the US got a right and a freedom to select their own lawyers, they have that right and freedom, and nobody will interfere with their right and freedom to do so. They can't dictate how the prosecution must conduct the prosecution. Due process is a two-way street. It's not a one-sided affair. So you can't claim that you're clamoring for due process for yourself, but you don't want due process for the other side. Justice is a two-way street. It's not a one-way carriageway.
AG, let's talk about this other argument that is in the public domain in relation to political persecution being at the helm of all of these matters. Azruddin Mohamed has argued that your comments, particularly on this case, is an indication of the type of political persecution and involvement in this matter. How do you respond to that?
The only person who is bringing in politics into this case is Azruddin Mohamed and his family. In fact, I believe that they entered into politics in anticipation of this extradition request coming, so that they can have at their disposal this plea of politicization. Which process started first? His political career or the investigation of these charges? The investigation of these charges started in 2010. The transactions, which I'm going to go into briefly, from which this extradition proceedings stem, span from 2017 to 2024. Was Azruddin Mohamed involved in politics during that period of time? In fact, based upon their own public statements, they claimed that they were supporters of the People's Progressive Party during that period. That is on the public record. They both said so. That is the period under review. Where was this investigation done? In Guyana? It was done in the United States of America. They transshipped gold using the people's system. They contaminated the whole financial system of the United States of America by making falsified declarations there, committing crimes, transnational crimes, money laundering, implicating US companies in their conspiracy to do so, send their cargo wherever they had to send them, using US as a conduit, as a transshipment point, contaminating the people process, then bring back their empty boxes, which was part of the fraud and part of the conspiracy, pass it through back to US system to come back to Guyana. That is the grand anti-money laundering, fraudulent international conspiracy that was committed, that they are accused of. That happened in the United States. That didn't happen here. And not now, not when he was involved in politics. That predated his politics by a large measure. In relation to the car, he bought the car in the United States. He fabricated paperwork to say that the car cost $76,000 when the car cost over 600 or something thousand US. He used the people wiring system to transfer the money, 3 tranche of wire transfer. You want me to go into the whole details? He gets someone in America to aid and abet and conspire with him to prepare falsified documents in America. That is what he's charged with in relation to the Lamborghini.
On the same
How those things relate to the government of Guyana? Tell me, where is the political connection to those things? Who is accused of those things? A PPP member? Who indicted him in the United States of America? Anybody from the PPP and all these people who author these documents? What connection they have to the government of Guyana? What this fella is doing is politicizing an international legal process. This is 2 countries engaging together as they are required to do under treaty and under the norms of international law and under international treaty obligations of cooperating to combat transnational crime, anti-money laundering on an international scale. That is what is going on here. And you have a subject of the investigation who is making these wild, reckless, and baseless attempts of politicization when he is the one who entered politics when he knew the extradition charges were coming, when he was sanctioned by OFAC, or when they were sanctioned by OFAC. They were not in politics. In fact, the whole country said that the PPP will cover them. Wasn't that the narrative? That they are close to the PPP and the PPP will protect them and nothing will happen to them. And the government of Guyana made it very clear that we have to protect the interest of Guyana. And we will ensure that the sanctions are observed. And we knew, and they knew, that the sanctions were not the end, that it was just the beginning, that additional processes were coming. And I believe in anticipation of that, they entered into politics. Now they are contriving politics now, or a facade, to say that, it is political, when they have made it political.
On this Lamborghini matter, AG, we know the government intends to withdraw these Lamborghini charges, but is that because the government has no evidence in this matter?
There again, I heard him say that he will bet his bottom dollar that the government will withdraw, that the Lamborghini charge will be withdrawn. When we made it very clear that these charges were instituted before the extradition request came, long before. And once the extradition request is received, and once a decision is made that the government will cooperate with the extradition request, that we have to clear the way for the extradition process to take place. And clearing the way involves the termination and or withdrawal of charges that are related to the extradition proceedings. Why? Because he is entitled to that protection. The law of extradition says that you can't extradite a person in a manner that he faces double jeopardy. You can't expose him to conviction in two different processes or in two different jurisdictions. You have to choose one. And we have agreed that because this one is of a transnational nature, because this involves our international obligation to combat organized crime, to combat international money laundering. We are a gold exporter. We have to protect our gold industry. When you use the gold exporting system to commit international offenses, they very well know the implications it can have for Guyana's gold ability to export gold if appropriate actions are not taken by the government of Guyana in compliance with our international obligations. And that is what we are doing. Now I hear the argument, we are going to forego all these taxes. We are not foregoing a dollar of taxes. As I said, a state's ability to recover outstanding taxes is second only to its ability to defend itself. Apart from national security powers, the second greatest plenitude of power that a state has is to recover taxes. So we have multiple ways of ensuring that every dollar that the state is cheated of will be recovered. But we don't have to jeopardize our international obligation and our treaty obligations and an extradition process to do so. We don't have to. And any government that is serious would do the very thing that we are doing. Any government would have done the same thing. Because transnational crimes takes a global importance than your national crimes. Especially, what is he charged with in relation to the Lamborghini? You know what is it?
What's it?
Making a false declaration. You know what is the penalty for that? He could go to jail. And that's the end of the matter. And we don't get a cent. Revenue type offenses are revenue oriented. They're not to penalize, but they are to recover revenue. And if he pleads guilty tomorrow and he goes to jail, we don't necessarily have $1 to collect in taxes. But there are a large repertoire of remedies that are available to directly go for taxes without necessarily employing the criminal process. And since the criminal process has been activated in an international manner and on the international stage, it behoves the state of Guyana to respect and recognize and defer to that international process. We are complying with the letter and spirit of the law, of the Constitution of Guyana. We are according him all the facilities to which he's entitled. And in fact, he's criticizing us for doing that. I don't understand. And obviously somebody misguidedly preparing these things for him to read. And I don't know why his legal advisors don't gag him. But, I mean, let him go on. Let him go on. Our duty is to keep the public domain free from these type of pollutions. Because that's what he's doing. Imputing all manner of irrelevance to deflect from the real proceedings. Now I hear him express a concern about how many $1 million we are paying state attorneys to defend these charges. He said that the state hired 13 or 14 attorneys. Well, I don't know where you get that information from. The GRA has conducted those charges, and I don't know that any large number of lawyers. But I mean, I don't know if this fellow don't think. He should be the last person to put monies, taxpayers' dollars out there as a talking point. This man get is 50 million US. He is charged with and accused of fleecing from the pockets of taxpayers of this country. Taxpayers' dollars, 50 million. 50 million. You know how many billion is that? If, let us say the state spends 500,000 US dollars. Let us assume. How can you compare that with what you pocket off? And flaunting it in people's face. And then got the audacity. Have the audacity to come and talk about taxpayers' dollars and expressing concerns about taxpayers' dollars. The government of Guyana will pay for all legitimate and legal expenses incurred. That is the cost of government. And the government at the same time will do that which is lawfully required to be done to recover monies that people try to cheat the government from and cheat the state of, which include 50 million US dollars. So I wanted to make it clear that the government is not wasting taxpayers' dollars. This is government's responsibility. Any government that is in this position of Guyana, of this government of Guyana, would have done identically. You have no choice but to prosecute these matters, and if it is that you have to forego prosecution locally to accommodate an international request, the comity that you owe your fellow state requires you to do so. And any person who has a fleeting acquaintance with extradition law and practice would know that. So we said that the charges that are related to the extradition process will have to be withdrawn in Guyana. We made that very clear. And his lawyers advised him that will have to happen. Now, he converts that into some kind of PR tool that he's predicting it now. So when it happens, oh, there's another hoorah, when he knows full well from the inception, and we said that from the inception, that is what will happen.
AG, November 24 is the next date to appear in court. What is expected to happen then?
November 24, well, the other thing is that they keep saying that they have to file a whole set of challenges and so on, and no challenge come forward. Suppose we were supposed to say, where is this big constitutional challenge that they were supposed to file? They didn't file it, and we make a big issue of that. Where are you, where are you taking the process to? The 24th is to see what, to give them the additional documents that we promised to give them, which, as I said, is to assist them, to be fair to them. Now, the hand that you're trying to, anyhow, and the 28th is fixed for the hearing of the committal proceedings to begin.
November 20.
So, there is no attempt to delay here. You will see when they start to delay. If they have nothing to fear, then let's move on to the committal matters. Stop all these sideshows. All of this is to divert attention. All this is to get out public sympathy out there. That is politicization of the matter. If he stops speaking, then the case will be allowed to go. But every time something happens, it's a big political explosion. And all kind of allegations are being made, and attempts are being made to win public sympathy and to create a narrative that he's the victim. It's a victimhood mentality you're seeing playing out here. This guy is the victim. And he is an international fugitive from the criminal justice system of the United States of America. That is what he is. That is why the law that is relevant to him is called the Fugitive Offenders Act. He is a fugitive, a criminal fugitive. Well, a fugitive is a criminal of the US criminal justice system. And the people want to take him there to try him for the offense that he committed here. And he's kicking and screaming as he's going. That is what it is, an errant child who doesn't want to go and face the consequences of their actions. This process is to ensure that people account for their deeds or misdeeds, if you wish. That is what this process is.
AG, final comment from you as people look on and find themselves in a valley of misinformation from time to time, your words of advice for the listening public.
Do not get entrapped and enmeshed in a PR stunt. This guy is obviously being advised by PR people to act out these things that he's acting out. They scribe a playbook for him and they give it to him and they say, play it out. You will win public sympathy. I don't know, it may be a basis to consider somewhere to see if the extradition can be stayed on this basis. Maybe they're creating a case to rush to some court to say, look, we are being persecuted, but as I said, it is the Americans who are extraditing them, not Guyana. This is an American extradition request. So if there is any political persecution, it is the Americans. You got to accuse the Americans. We are simply facilitating a process and discharging our concomitant legal responsibilities on the law, on the international practice, and under our treaty that we have with the US in relation to extradition. And that is what it is. All the extradition cases that he cited for, those 4 that he talked about, occurred over the past 4 years and quietly. He making this a spectacle. Who is making this a spectacle? He making it a spectacle. All those things were quietly done. And nobody knew about it. And somebody drew my attention to the fact that some years ago, Rex McKay, senior counsel, appeared for the American government in the extradition of a man named Diaz. Diaz was extradited about 25 years ago to the US. And McKay, senior counsel of late, represented the US interest. Right? So these things happen. As I said, anyone who listening to me can call around the Caribbean. Call Trinidad, Jamaica, the Eastern Caribbean. Extraditions have been done from almost every Caribbean territory. And I'm not asking you to go outside of the Caribbean. And find out what is the outstanding practice. And you will see that the state who is being requested to send the person always have to provide legal representation. And we have done so. But the lawyers are normally approved by the US, the requesting state, because it is their request that is being prosecuted. I've said that 10 times since I sat here.
AG, I want to thank you so much for coming through and sharing this information with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've heard there from the Attorney General, Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honorable Mohamed Anil Nandlall. Stay tuned to the National Communications Network as we bring you more of these and other updates. My name is Shaquan Gill. I'm saying goodbye for now.